exhausting whatever they were up to last night. Okay, let's shift back a little bit. You can see what's happening on this side. It's interesting, Brian and I were just chatting before we started the sunrise safari. It's almost like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's almost like this den site was engineered by a combination of trees falling naturally and elephants pushing them over. It's created such a perfect little playpen all the way around the den. We absolutely can't get any closer. This is where we have to sit, and it's like it was designed that way. And I think that Viam's call that the hyenas have moved to a better neighborhood, or a nice neighborhood, it's definitely a good one. Hello, Munchkin. How are you doing? Oh, such a sleepy hyena cub. I was looking to see if maybe there was any sign of the other cubs, but they also appear to be fast asleep. Eyes are kind of open, thinking about being awake. But really it might just be a bit too exhausting. And it looks as though, looking at the back end of this particular hyena, he spent some time in the mud. Maybe not last night, but certainly not looking the cleanest of little boys. As far as I can tell, this is the older cub. Now, I've been reading up, because they are one of my favorite animals. I've actually been rereading one of my favorite books on hyenas. And in particular, reading up into the subject that relates to why these hyenas are so exhausted. Now, I got asked a question a couple of days ago when I was sitting at the hyena den about how much they scavenge versus how much they hunt. And I know that I've mentioned quite a few times that they are very proficient hunters. They are more than capable of performing great feats of hunting skill and taking down quite seriously large prey. But they are nocturnal predators, which is why these two are quite simply too exhausted for words. It might be a bit of a stretch to say they were celebrating the Springbok victory. They were out and about last night, roaming around to try and find food. Although this little cub is probably still dependent on mom for milk, but ranging further and further afield. Now the thing is, as large predators acting at night, that immediately puts them into competition with the lions of the reserve. Now it's not as simple as saying that hyena hunt more than they scavenge. It depends on where you are in the world. So in Kruger National Park, which is what I was reading up on, there's a ratio of about 2 hyenas to every 1 lion. Possibly even smaller than that in certain areas. So let's look at our little clan here. There's 3 adult females that we see regularly. The mother of this cub, the mother that's lying down, and then another mother of the twins. And there might be a couple more that come and go. Maybe 1 or 2 females, 1 or 2 clan males that for the most part are largely absent. And then think about all of the lions who admittedly have not been on Juma in the last few days, but just think about all of the lions in the area. There's the WildEarth Pride, the Birmingham boys, Sticks on the odd occasion, and even the Tsalala males will all fall into part of this clan's territory. And there is plenty of food out here. There is an abundance of food. And they tend to, in this particular part of the world, hyenas tend to go out foraging in maybe 1s or 2s, maybe 3 at a push, but for the most part, quite small numbers. So if you've got lots of lions, they're killing lots of things, and they're bigger than you, why try to challenge them to steal their food? Why not just wait until they're finished with whatever they're eating? There's always going to be a well-stocked supply. So in this particular part of the world, these hyenas probably scavenge between 70 to 80% of what they eat, and they hunt the rest. So they're not huge hunters in this particular area. And it's not really worth the physical confrontation with lions. You do get the odd occasion where clans get lucky and they come together in big numbers and they can chase lions off their kills, especially if there's no males present. But for the most part, we saw with those Nkuhuma lionesses, none of the hyenas came to challenge them for that buffalo, even though it was just 2 of them. And a large number of them could have easily chased them away. But if we go to somewhere like into Botswana, into the Kalahari, and the sort of northern western areas of South Africa, Namibia, just imagine that there's a ratio there of, say, 3 to 4 hyenas to 1 lion. Prey is really, really scarce. There's hardly any out there. And it's actually really worth not only hunting prey for yourself and risking injury, because you just never know when it's going to come from next, but it's also worth confronting those lions. And typically the clans in those areas, they band together, they forage in much larger groups, and they're capable, because of their higher numbers, of chasing lions. And that's where you get those incredible photos of the conflict between spotted hyenas and lions, where they chase them off their kill, or try to, especially if there's only female lions, there's only lionesses present. And of course they come with the added advantage that they're probably more intelligent than any other predator out here, barring maybe wild dogs. I think Brent and I would probably have an argument about that, but I would say they're the most intelligent predator out here. And so this little one that we're looking at here has quite an interesting future ahead of him. If it is a boy, which we suspect that it is, he's got another 2 or 3 years with his clan, probably about 2, 3 might be pushing it a bit, before he heads out and disperses into the wild. And it'll take him a while to find a nice settled area that he can call his own, and a lot of persistence and patience, and playing submissive to those big ladies that he has to convince that he's the right man for them. And he has to play around, stay on the edges of another clan's territory if he wants to become a clan male. And it really, in terms of spotted hyena males, there's no real fighting with each other for access to mates. It's more about a game of persistence, because those females tend not to be that tolerant of the presence of males. It takes a long time for them to convince a female to mate with them. If it's a little female, then the future is a little bit more secure. So she'll spend the rest of her life with her natal clan, for the most part, unless something happens and the clan gets too big. And they will be secured. But because this little one's mother, as far as I can tell, is not the highest ranking female in this clan, the access to food, the level of security is slightly less than our little cub, our little dark cub, who is largely absent from the scene. Oh, I just got a whiff of the hyenas. You smelly creatures. Now, if you're a new viewer and you want to know more about this, or of course if you're a regular viewer and you want to ask some of the more in-depth questions, you can do so on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv and let us know what your thoughts and feelings are. We'd love to hear from you. And if you are new, let us know, and we can explain some of the things that some of our regular viewers might take for granted to know now. And we can definitely give you a little bit of a lesson in how the animals out here work. Now, apart from ears twitching, there's not much in the way of movement at this den. Might also be a little bit late in the morning. Let's have a look. Since we do have this little guy lying the way that he is, we've got a fairly good view of those enormous feet, already reaching the size of a small adult's feet. They grow very, very fast. It's much like having a puppy with overly large feet. Yes, I'm talking about your foot. Could you put it back in the air for us? No. Yes? No, not so much. And you can see the size difference, or we're trying to, oh, scratch, itch. Oh, that was a lot of activity. I imagine they must pick up ticks and all kinds of parasites that make for some seriously itchy spots. Now, the way that he's now positioned himself makes it a little bit less clear, but there's a tremendous difference between the front paw and the back paw in terms of size. And that delicate sloping back. And the way that they move, they've got a slight slouch with those powerful shoulders and then slightly weaker rear end. And that, of course, as I've mentioned before, is such a perfect adaptation to the way that they move and the way that they cover ground. They've got so much stamina to keep them moving. And that's a way of living in competition with an animal that is essentially much, much bigger, easily double their size, and active at the same time and competing for the same types of food. They've got to be able to out-stamina something like a lion. They need to have something that separates them in some way from that same ecological niche. So although they come into contact with other predators, for the most part, leopards can escape them and hop into trees. Although Shadow doesn't seem to be too good at dragging her kills up. Shadow, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is a leopard who is fairly famous for having her kills stolen by hyenas because she keeps leaving them on the ground. And they occasionally come into contact with cheetah, especially when cheetah are hunting on full moon nights. But for the most part, their main competition comes from interactions with lions. We have a great question from Melissa, who is watching all the way from Los Angeles and is one of our long-time viewers. Now, Melissa, you would like to know if hyenas will be cannibalistic in terms of eating each other, if they die of natural causes or any other reason, for example, if they've been killed by a lion. So I've mentioned that they do get into competitions with lions and occasionally they do get killed. In fact, fairly regularly, especially if there's a male lion involved. And quite often, interestingly enough, male lions, sub-adult males, are usually the ones to really go after the hyenas and try to give them a good beating. It's just part of their natural youth and testosterone. But at that point, once a lion has killed a hyena, he leaves it alone. It's not going to touch it. And that's the same for most of their natural deaths out here. But, yes, absolutely, they will cannibalize each other. I've got the most incredible photo. I really, really must find it somewhere. So the area that I used to work in, we also used to work with Panthera. And Panthera is a huge organization with a lot of different research projects that go on. But in this particular case, we had 50 different camera trap sites with 100 camera traps out. So we got a lot of pictures. It was aimed at looking at leopards, but we also obviously sifting through about 30 to 40,000 pictures, got pictures of all kinds of incredible things. Greater bush babies, pangolins, aardvarks, and lots of spotted hyenas. And it was fantastic because once Panthera was done with the work they were doing on the leopards, they let us have access to all of their photos to try and sift through and work out the spotted hyena dynamics. And somewhere, I must look for it, I'm sure I've got a copy of it somewhere, there's a picture of a spotted hyena carrying the head of another spotted hyena. They're not fussy in that respect, and it makes sense. You can't afford to be fussy out here, and you can always take advantage of whatever's happened. Also recently read in the book that I'm currently reading that in brown hyena, it's also common, it's also seen. I found a hyena skull outside a brown hyena den once, and obviously brown hyena, well, not obviously, if you don't know, brown hyena tend to bring kills back to their den far more often than spotted hyena do. And I read this interesting situation where cubs were being raised at a den site, brown hyena cubs, almost at the age of independence, but not quite, still right at that point where their mom is still lactating, but the cubs are starting to roam further afield, much like this little guy. And the mother had died, nobody was quite sure how, but a couple of 100 meters from the den, and her cubs actually went and ate her. And it may seem distasteful to us, but we're really not in that situation at all. We can't pass on our own way of doing things. They need to take advantage of every single option they have in terms of nutrients out here. So yes, absolutely, they will cannibalize each other. They won't go out and kill each other for the most part. Spotted hyenas, when they do have fights, or brown hyenas, they tend not to be as aggressive as something like a lion fight, where those male lions often fight to the death. So spotted hyenas generally don't show that same level of aggression to each other. They don't kill each other all that often, but if there is a death of natural causes, then they will absolutely take advantage of it. It would be interesting to see, say for example, and hopefully this doesn't happen, but if there's something happened to this little cub, and I think they've passed the danger age, they've done really well so far, but if something were to happen to this little cub, it would be interesting to see how its mother would react, because I think that instinct at that point might be quite strong in terms of not eating the cub. Sorry, little one, that was not a subject you wanted to hear about. I think they're beautiful, especially when they're young like this. They're so cute. And we have a question as well from Eye of the Tiger, and hey, this time I got your name right. That is a lesson learnt. Now, you wanted to know if clans will break up in the same way lion prides sometimes do. And yes, they will. Again, just like with what I was talking about in terms of scavenging versus hunting, it depends on the area how big a clan size might be. It depends on the environment they're in, and it depends on what the sort of food and prey, access to food density is. But yes, they will split up if they start to get too large. Now, I said earlier that this little cub, because his mother is a lower ranking female, has slightly less access to resources than the cubs of the higher ranking females. That's because mommy has to wait her turn for the higher ranking females to have the access to the best foods and the best part of the food. So that milk will be slightly less protein in it, slightly less access to resources. And so at that point, very often what you get is, it's an interesting situation, and it's quite complex to explain, but I'll try and do it in the simplest possible terms. Essentially, with lower ranking females, they have a much smaller breeding success rate. So they might reproduce, maybe produce 2 litters every 4 years or 2 litters every 5 years, as opposed to a higher ranking female that could produce a litter every single year. And that's supported by scientific averages, scientific research. And most likely the reason behind that is competition for resources. But at that point, what that lower ranking female can do is she can start to bond very, very closely with her daughters, who will stick around with her, until she gets to the point where her numbers have built up and she can have a proper split and a proper coup almost in terms of the clan. And they'll either fight to the point that the lower ranking females then usurp the higher ranking females and become top dog, or top hyena in this case, or they split away and they move off into different areas so that they have the option to be dominant in a separate clan. It is interesting, and it's quite hard to explain. But for example, as this female who's tucked away in the bushes there, we suspect that she is the matriarch, but she's old. Her time is limited, and most likely her position will be inherited by her daughters, one of her older daughters, but it could be that one of the lower ranking females gets to usurp that position. Now we see, when we watch documentaries of sort of Eastern Africa and areas around there, we see these images of huge numbers of hyenas moving together in clans. And Bugsy, you were wondering why this particular clan is so small in number. Well, first of all, we actually don't know how big this clan is. We know which females we see regularly at the den, that's because they've got cubs, and occasionally there's the odd visitor who comes around to say hello. But we don't fully know. This is the best way of getting an understanding, is to sit at a den site, but we still won't fully know how many clan males they have, how many young sub-adult females are wandering around and sub-adult males. But yes, it is smaller than some of the ones that we see out in different areas, and it's a combination of habitat as well as the access to food and resources, how open the area is, how many lions there are. And in the greater Kruger area, which is where we sit at the moment, it's much more, really there's only so many hyena that a clan can actually support. So in areas that are nice and open and big, like the deserts, the clans can be slightly bigger, but there are all kinds of limiting factors involved, including what type of den sites you have, what kind of access to food you have. And spotted hyenas in, say, Eastern Africa have a completely different dynamic. They need those huge clans to be able to bring down the prey items that are available. And they've got a whole interesting system, because all of a sudden they've got enormous access to food. Say where those herds of wildebeest come through, and let's say they come through to their territories, then they've got food for days. It's an abundance. There's calves everywhere. It's a perfect hunting ground. Then all of a sudden that herd keeps going and keeps migrating. And let's say you're a female with cubs at a den. They have recorded females doing round trips to go and feed off migrating herds of about 5 days. So they leave their cubs for 5 days at a time, go all the way around, have a good feed at the migrating herd, and then go all the way back to their den sites to feed their cubs again. So it's phenomenal how different. There's so many different factors that determine clan size. Little cub is giving us that's thorny, you silly thing. That can't be. Yeah, I didn't think that was going to be all that pleasant. That was very silly. That looked hugely uncomfortable. Oh, and I must tell you something, those thorns itch and burn for ages afterwards. You silly thing. That was very, very silly. But that little cub gave us a great showing of its little teeth. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do before I reposition? You can see the reticence there in actually approaching that female. It's not his mother. I'm going to move off, maybe to find some shade, or maybe a stick to chew on that doesn't have thorns. You silly creature. Where are you going? Shift forward a little bit, see if we can stick with him. Because he's up and about now. Might be doing something interesting. Where are you going to go? Now, I was going to say that Molly wanted to know about his teeth, or roughly how many teeth hyena have, especially since it gave such a good example of using them. Wendy doesn't like to turn all the way to the left. And Molly, I'm going to answer your question in a moment. I just want to try and loop around to stay with this cub and see what it's up to. den has become a little bit easier to navigate. It's still not quite. Away from the den site and off on the adventure. Oh, bumpy, bumpy. And Molly, the reason I'm delaying answering your question is because I'm actually trying to frantically do a count in my head at the same time as following. They've got 3 big molars, top 6, 12, 16, between 24 and 30, give or take. The most important of those obviously are those huge molars that they have, those powerful crushing surfaces. I think Mommy might have called. I'm not sure. I'm going to give the cub a little bit of space because I don't want to frighten him. Oh, that might have been an error of our ways. Off he goes on an adventure where we cannot follow, unfortunately. I've seen them out in this road before. Still see him. And I wanted to just see if maybe Mom was coming to say hello. Getting very brave, heading out on their own. Oh, he's disappeared. Oh well. Well, our hyenas have disappeared, or at least our hyena cub has disappeared. And the matriarch shows no sign of moving herself from beneath her comfortable tree. So I think we shall carry on and see what we can find. And to finish up answering Molly's question, I did do a frantic count and came to the conclusion it was between 24 to 30. It's quite a broad answer. I could probably do better than that. I'll have a look for you in a moment, Molly, when I next stop, but it's somewhere in that region. And I said the most important ones are those big crushing molars. They've got 2 sets at the top, 2 sets at the bottom, and they provide that perfect crunching surface. And they've got those enormously broad heads that are really so useful in terms of providing the muscle attachments they need for that crushing power that they have. Then they've got the usual canines, not as big as something like a lion or a leopard, but still very firmly rooted in, so that when they do hunt their own prey, they can catch them that way. And then a couple of incisors for not only getting those bits of meat off the bone, but also having a good scratch every now and again. Nibbling just the way that your pet dogs might do when they use those front teeth to just nibble at an itch. I just heard a report on the Game Drive channel. I just want to confirm that I heard correctly. Leaving Misikaya Aubrey's Road, open lock. Craig, what was that update about Ngala on Arathusa? Sorry, Brent's calling me now. Standing by. Copy that, thank you. think we need to go and take a trip to Arathusa, because I believe there might be some action happening there. I'm not going to speed across though, because I know that there are lots and lots of vehicles moving towards that sighting. So we're going to be taking probably about 4th standby or 5th standby. But let's cruise along, see what we find along the way. I do need to get onto Arathusa though, so that I can call myself into that sighting. Let's go find out who's sitting west of the Arathusa airstrip. And it's not Shadow. I know that some of you who are watching the Sunset Safari know that yesterday Brian and I scoured that place. It's not Shadow. At that den site we've got, sorry, bear with me for one moment. I think it was just a strange looking hyena track. Anyway, at that den site we've got 3 sets of cubs, one of the oldest one, then 2 that belong to the same mother, so they're twins, and then the youngest one. And Anna Marie, you were wondering if the maximum set of cubs that a hyena can have is 2. And yes, for the most part. There have been the odd recorded case of 3 of them at a time, but it's very, very unusual, and it works to their serious disadvantage. So in that particular case, in hyena's particular case, because they do not allosuckle, so the females will not share feeding opportunities with the other cubs. So it works to the cub's favor, not in terms of numbers, but to have individual mother attention. So cubs born in 2s tend to grow not quite as fast as a single cub. And not only that, but they start establishing a dominance hierarchy, basically from birth. I know that there are recorded cases where they've watched hyena cubs being born, and as soon as they start to move, and they are born a little bit more highly developed than something like a lion or a leopard. So as soon as they're born, they start to move, their eyes are open, they can hear, and immediately they start fighting and establishing that dominance hierarchy. They're born with fully erupted baby teeth, so they can do some serious damage, even as a tiny little cub. And once they do that, once they establish that dominance hierarchy, that cub who is on top will essentially dominate mom's attention. They will suckle together, but for the most part has the first and the best access to food, including when they start to grow slightly older, and then they can really push for access to meat as well. So yes, 2 is generally the maximum. 1 is actually better. And keep an eye on the way. Whoa, stay, hat. It's windy. Keep an eye on the way that the littlest cub of the group grows, because its mother is the matriarch, or at least very, very high ranking. So mom is the matriarch. It's a single cub. We think it might be a male, but it could be a female still. It's hard to tell. Have a look at the way that it grows compared to the growth rate of the twins. The twins have a slightly lower ranking mother. There's 2 of them, so there's competition. And maybe just keep an eye on that. It's an interesting thought. And one more thing that I read and that I learned, just while we're talking about mothers and the way that they care for their cubs, I've said to you that they have the highest nutritional value in their milk of any animal out here. And in fact, they have the highest nutritional value in their milk of any carnivore, barring a polar bear, which obviously really needs to fatten out the cubs before to give them a nice insulating layer, or a seal. So it's the 3rd highest of any carnivore on the planet in terms of nutrition and protein content. Interesting. Impala Road at the moment, heading towards Arathusa, slowly but surely. And this is a nice there's a couple of really nice open clearings here with plenty of grazing opportunity, where usually we'd see the wildebeest coming through. And there's one male who lives somewhere there. But Ginny, you were saying you haven't seen any recently and you were wondering where they are. Well, Ginny, oh my word, all these boys. Hello. Ginny, I think that the wildebeest are hiding wherever the leopards are hiding. So I might be the wrong person to ask there. But no, they've moved south. A lot of them have moved south since the rains, because there's some really good grazing opportunities and nice open plains where they can go and feed on the grass. And look at this beautiful collection of kudu bulls. We see them fairly regularly. One of them includes the one nicknamed Zeus. He's on his way to that bush as well, with his incredibly widespread horns. Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 impressive males. And Zeus is the one that's off to the left of your screen there. He's moving away. He's not going to make life very easy for us. But he's got very easily identifiable widespread horns. There's another male who's hiding at the moment, and I'm hoping he's going to come through because he's my favorite of this group of kudu males. We do see them fairly regularly. He might poke his head out soon. Oh, he's going to hide behind a quarry bush. There's one male with the most incredible, there he is, as he disappears. I love the way that his horns spiral up and curve. I'm shifting forward because the males are, they're going to stop. Beautiful big kudu bulls. And I wonder whether Zeus's widespread horns be of advantage or disadvantage in terms of essentially filling their function. I'm not going to follow those kudu because they're just going to keep running away from us as we go through the bush. That block is very, very thick. So they've moved into a point of safety. They're going to hide away there, especially because it is windy. And any attempt to try and follow them is just going to keep them moving slowly away from us. Anyway, I was trying to work out. So kudu bulls have horns purely for mating purposes and display purposes. Those curved, it's not really a weapon per se. They're not going to be able to defend themselves from lions really well with them. But I wonder in terms of, there's very common stories of kudus getting hooked together when they fight, and a lot of them have died. There's an incredible statue in Skukuza in the Kruger National Park of 2 kudu bulls that were locked together by those horns, and you can imagine with those curves how if they get them at just the wrong angle, they twist together and catch, and then they can't get away from them, and they can die that way. I'm just wondering whether Zeus has a bit of an advantage in that his horns spread out further, so he's unlikely to get caught with any other male. But then it's not the easiest to have a proper clash, I suppose. He might leave the middle of his head open to any kind of attack. I don't know, interesting point. I don't know the answer, I'm just thinking about it now. Really nice bachelor group of kudu. You don't often see that in terms of numbers, and for some reason we see those boys fairly regularly around here. Now, it's not like a bachelor herd of, say, elephants or zebra that we see around. Kudu are not really established herd creatures. They'll live together in groups, but they're also fairly, like giraffe, they're fairly relaxed about that. So they'll go off on their own and they'll come back together. There's no real fighting or dominance or anything like that, or even a harem system in the same way that zebra have. Essentially what they're there to do is to keep an eye on each other and maybe practice sparring with each other, but for the most part, there's not much in the way of a hierarchy. They don't have territories. They only really fight when they're competing, much like giraffe, when they're competing for a female in estrus. That being said, there's two males there. There's Zeus and the one with the really curly horns that I pointed out earlier that I said was my favorite. Not sure if maybe you can think of a good name for him, but I really like him. But those two are the biggest bulls in that group, so they'll naturally be established as the dominant males in that they're just bigger. And in terms of horn growth, those three twirls that they have establish them as a fully grown kudu bull, but they will continue to grow throughout their lives. And there are different genetic strains, so some kudu will be bigger than others. They will have bigger horns than others. But for the most part, it's just a sign of age when you've got those nice big three curl horns. It's not really like with lions' manes showing nice high levels of testosterone, especially when they're dark in color. Jilly's question about the wildebeest and where they've gone. Got a fairly similar question, similar but different, from Jim, who's watching in Washington State. Jim, you wanted to know, we see fairly regularly, we see the buffalo bulls, those Duggar boys, and yet we haven't seen a breeding herd in quite a long time. And the reason why I said it was similar to the wildebeest question is I think that a lot of them are moving in areas where there's nice open plains of things like buffalo grass, which will be more towards the south, or around the river systems and that kind of area, where I think they've had fractionally more rain than we have. The Duggar boys tend to be a little bit more sedentary. They don't follow the big herd movements, and obviously they're not present in numbers that can reach over 500 or 600. So they don't need as much in the way of resources to sustain them. So in that sense, they're quite happy to stick around Djuma, although there has been a dip in number of Duggar boys that we've seen. But I think that the buffalo herds, for the most part, have moved into different areas and towards the Kruger, the big river systems there as well. That being said, Brent did call in that he had a breeding herd crossing close to Gowrie Gate, which is where we enter the reserve, and onto Simbambili. So they are still around. I think we've just been caught in a little bit of a vacuum right now. And those buffalo that crossed over last night into Simbambili were probably the reason that we heard the Salati males calling from close to Gowrie Gate. And I know that Brent headed there first thing this morning to go and check and see if there's any chance that they might have popped their heads into Djuma. But it doesn't seem to be the case. My way back to exactly the same area that Brian and myself were occupied in yesterday for the sunset safari. And Charlie, you were wondering how far is the airstrip from the Arathusa waterhole? And the answer is probably about, at its northernmost tip, maybe 300 meters. It's very, very close. Essentially, the airstrip is designed and built so that it's not too far from the lodge, and the lodge obviously sits right on that dam. So it's very, very close. And it's also, because that dam is there, it's got a wonderful network of drainage lines in all kinds of directions around it. Makes for a perfect hiding place for a leopard-like shadow to disappear for an entire afternoon, after an entire afternoon's worth of searching. She's there somewhere, I promise you, hiding away. I'm not sure if any of you saw any updates from her on the Arathusa Dam camera. I'm assuming not. I'm pretty sure I would have heard about it by now. This road is going to be a nightmare when the rains come. Oh, it's so grooved and muddy already. Bumpy. Wendy's done very well to have survived the post-wild dog frenetic chase from yesterday morning. On lion sightings over the last few days. The Birmingham boys have caused so much chaos that the lions have kind of scattered in all different directions. And John, you were wondering if I have any updates for you on Junior, the Nkahumas, any of the lions around us. And I actually can't answer that question because I'm kind of on the way to a lion sighting now. I don't know who it is. It is a mystery. We'll have to wait and see until we approach. There we go. We can find out now, as it happens. Let's stop and say hello to Ryan. Morning, morning. Hello. Hi, guys.
So to answer your question, yes, there are female guides.
Hi. I'm Jamie. Thank you. How's it, Ryan? How are you doing?
Good.
Good, thanks.
Yeah, about the Ngala.
I'm going to head there now. What's the standby like?
I don't even think there is one. I'll find out for you quickly.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Station unlocked with the Ngala, right? Vanna. Right. Who's controlling Mama there?
Everyone at number one.
Elephant.
Les.
While ago.
Rhino.
Elephant.
I think there's a second available set.
Cool. Perfect. Thank you.
If I get anything better, I'll give you a shout.
Wonderful. Thanks. It's at the airstrip, western side of airstrip. Is that
On
right?
Central.
Central.
On Central. So not far from the airstrip. As you go up Central, you'll see the Nalala.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, as long as I know how to get close, then I can get the radio to work.
Okay, cool.
Cool, man. Cheers, guys. Bye. Alrighty. Good news. So we've got a second standby, so we can make our way slowly. I know exactly where to go, so there's no stress there. I didn't ask Ryan who it was because I kind of want it to be a surprise as well. I'm quite interested to see who it might be. Are those the same kudu? Surely not. I'm pretty sure it is the same kudu. That's interesting. I don't know how they managed that. Cool. Ducked in front of us somehow. That's pretty impressive. We weren't driving fast, but we covered quite a bit of distance between one kudu sighting and the other. Maybe it's another group. One of them looks very widespread though. Beautiful. And everything's so beautiful and green on Arathusa with all of the silver cluster leaves getting their leaves. Creates a beautiful frame for our magnificent bulls. Okay, let's go find some lions. Not too fast though, because there's a couple of vehicles in the sighting. So we're going to go find some lions, but we're going to do it slowly and sedately. And find out who they are. been sidetracked, desperately grasping for it, and I don't know where it went. Something to do with, I remember what it was. I'll tell you that a little bit later. Oh, I remember what it was. I was answering yes, I remember. I was answering John's question. That's what it was. Okay, so I was saying that I don't really have any updates for you. I have my guesses as to who we might be going to see. I'd love to hear your opinion as well as to who you think it might be. And you can always send that through on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv. Let's see if we can figure out who it is. And you all know the movements, well, I mean, they've been a bit unpredictable, but for the most part, you know which prides are where. We're going to the southern section of Arathusa. I don't know if it's males, I don't know if it's females. It's going to be a lot of guesswork from us. One line, I can almost guarantee that it's not. Oh, and I could eat my words here. But you were wondering if I have any updates on Junior, and the answer is no, I don't. I strongly suspect that Junior has dispersed quite far out of this area. After all of the drama with the Birmingham boys, and actually the deaths of 2 of his Pride members, I think that might have been the push that he needed to leave his Pride for good. He was at the right age, and we could still see him. You just never know. He might return. He's going to be a bit nomadic for a while. Hopefully, fingers crossed, he finds a nice, what's the word? Another nice unknown male to join up with, so that he's at least got some strength of numbers on his side. That might help as well. Hoping they're going to carry on doing what they're doing. Try and get it out of the sun. Aww. Come on, boys. You were putting on such a good show. Now you're just disappearing bottoms. Ah, well. He took the chance. They were sparring with each other, just by the way. But getting there and getting a nice view of it, unfortunately, they decided to stop. And they're not really sparring for any good reason, which is why there's not much in the way of interest there, and they've been distracted by the prospect of food. It's just a little bit of high spirits in a bachelor herd, much like what those kudu were doing earlier. I've spotted something else spotted though. Not a leopard, before you get too excited. But equally lovely in my opinion. Why are the Arathusa giraffes so shy? They're so camera shy. Stand by. Do a little bit of a loop. Stop here or she's going to disappear. Very interesting ossicones though. Oh. These ossicones are so thick it almost makes me think male. But they're tufted with hair, so maybe not. But interesting the way that they've grown together like that. There's a female, although she does have quite thick ossicones. But look at the way that they've distorted ever so slightly to touch together. And that could be from a defective growth plate when they were growing, or it could be that she bumped them. She had an injury when she was young and they were still growing and still soft. So unlike our other antelope that we've been looking at, say those beautiful kudu or the impala that were sparring together with those horns, giraffe are born with theirs, so they don't grow up from a growth plate and keep growing. When they're born, they're flat against the top of the head, so that they don't cause the mother any discomfort. And it's basically soft cartilage that then springs up and is steadily hardened with bone as the giraffe gets older. There's something about knobthorn clearings that the magpie shrikes love. So if you're hearing all of those whistles, they're making a tremendous racket. That's what it is. I don't know what she's so intently staring at. She's been staring in the same direction. She's not stressed, but she does keep glancing over in that direction. Craig has found me. Hold on one moment. He's just going to call me on the radio. Standing by. I'm just going to let Craig know where I am. Oh, alright, let's keep going because I think we might start getting a position at this lion sighting. So let's start heading across whilst I communicate my position to Craig. Craig. I've switched back to this channel for now. I'm just at Knobthorn Clearings on my way to that sighting. Just letting Craig know where I am. On our earlier interaction with Ryan, where he pointed out to his guests that you do in fact get female guides, Georgianne from all the way from Illinois wants to know what it's like and if I'm the only lady guide in this particular area. There were two other girls who were guiding here, two other women who were guiding here with Lee Guttridge's group a couple of weeks ago, but for the most part at the moment, at least in this particular area, there will be woman guides at Londolozi and Sabi and so on further south. In this particular area, I am currently the only female as far as I know. Somebody's trying to get hold of me. Sorry guys, we do have to just coordinate this lion sighting before there's a mess. Standing by. Just come past Knobthorn Clearings on Parallel Road South. I'm making my way towards that Indala sighting. And for the most part, I don't think there's much in the way of differences in terms of being a female versus a male guide. There's the odd guest who feels a little bit insecure with it. Doesn't often happen though, and I can't say I've ever been treated with disrespect by any of the male guides whose company I've encountered. It does mean that you become one of the boys, so to speak, but that's inevitable out here. The fact that I know more about cars than they do also kind of helps a lot of the time. Still calling me. I'll just coordinate once again. Standing by. Last station, I can't copy you clearly at all. I'm just going to make my way closer towards the airstrip and then I'll be able to hear you. A bit of a dip right now, so the radio goes a little bit crackly. Bear with me for the moment as we loop around. Like driving through tunnels and avenues of green now. Everything's just growing over us. And very, very soon it won't just be the trees that we have to duck and dive to avoid, but the golden orb spiders are going to be building their nests and building their webs across the road, which I believe makes a whole load of extra work for the cameraman concerned when their camera lens keeps getting covered in bits of silk. Bird for your bird list, if I can get it in time. Brian, do you think you can get that bird from here? Maybe not. A bit further back. Got it. I'm not sure how many of you have seen them recently. It's a southern white-crowned shrike to add to your bird list that you should all be keeping, of course. I don't see them that often, so it's nice to encounter this one. Beautiful bird. Look how clearly that white stands out there. So a southern white-crowned shrike. It's not a migratory species, so they are still here all year round. And you usually see them in groups. I can only see this one in particular though. Trying to batten down against the wind that you can see blowing the treetops around. And a very solid, very stocky shrike. And quite a beautiful bird. Well done, Brian. Thank you. I'm glad that that particular bird stuck around. I've had quite a few moments in the last few weeks, the last week or so, where every time I've tried to show the audience a bird, it's disappeared. They can be terribly inconvenient that way. I'm continuing on my way along towards this lion sighting, and a lot of the times we've had to rely on updates from other lodges as to what's happening on their side with the lions. So we can't fully follow the story from start to finish unless we speak to other people, because we cannot travel in every part of the Sabi Sands. And Pat, you were wondering why it is that that's the case, why it is we can't go into all places around here or as far as some of the other lodges seem to. And it's quite a complicated issue. It's to do with the number of vehicles. Okay, the vehicles have an impact on the reserve that you have. So if you've got loads and loads of vehicles coming through, all going to the same sighting, all driving off-road, you're going to have off-road tracks everywhere. You're going to do damage to the environment. So you've got to keep a limit on how many vehicles can come through. And there's so many different properties around here. There's a lot of negotiation that has to happen in terms of traverse, and they've got to keep a limit as to numbers. So although it might seem that the lodges have larger traverse areas, they don't. It's not necessarily the case. but they're also commercial lodges, and traverse rights cost money. It's a political thing as well as anything like that. So that some of it can be through payment because they're commercial lodges. They've got lots of guests coming in to cover costs, and because they've got that pressure of guests coming in, you guys have got months to see the animals that we share. So it's okay if the lions disappear off Djuma for a few days. That's fine. We can follow the stories from the other guides, and they'll be back in a couple of days. But if you're a tourist guide and your tortoise, please don't be a dead tortoise, it's very empty. But if you're a tourist guide, you've got guests for 2 days and they want to see everything. You need a little bit more in the way of area to cover. I think it might be an empty tortoise shell. A big one. Oh no, he's there, he's there. Hey buddy. You're huge. I love tortoises. It's my second tortoise sighting of the year. Hello. Look at him poking his way out there. He or she, I'm not too sure. What a beautiful leopard tortoise. Come on, buddy. It's okay. You're not dangerous. Here we go. There we go. Poking head out. Oh, Brian, sorry. I know our tortoise is just popping out. Can we pop one more bird onto our bird list before it disappears? Here you go, guys. Just quickly. Coqui Franklin with that bright orange head. You don't always get to see them. That's why I'm distracting us from that's the male. He disappeared off. That's why I just had to rush us away from our tortoise sighting quickly. But that's okay, because our tortoise isn't going anywhere. Our Coqui Franklin have now disappeared. Here you go, getting braver. Definitely getting braver. And after a long winter spent estivating, so slowing down a metabolism, essentially hibernating, but not quite as dramatic, we're starting to see them come out once again. Now, I'd love to go and investigate whether or not this is a male or a female, but as I mentioned with the other tortoise a couple of days ago, here we go. Oh, there he goes. Look at the way his legs move. They're the best. Look at the spines on his legs, that hard armor. Those outside bits are what he's going to use to protect himself. If I move slowly, then they won't know I'm here. I'm going to just slowly amble off. Maybe just turn my back on you guys. You'd be surprised how fast they can move when they want to. Anyway, as I was saying, I'd love to go and investigate if it's a male or a female. But any kind of distress that I could cause this tortoise now may cause it to release the water that it's got stored inside it, inside a little organ known as a bursa. And because we have absolutely no idea when the rains are going to come, there's no way I'm going to be doing that. Even if I saw a tortoise in the road that I wanted to move out of the way, I wouldn't do it. Because they release that when they're in distress. They eject all of that water and they need it. It's an extra storage organ, and they can dehydrate if you do that. Hey, he's quite a big little guy. This tortoise is a good couple of years old. Could even be up to 10 years old. Well, Susie, I'm so glad that we could make your day today. I love tortoises too, and I know that you've been after a tortoise sighting. So there we go. We've had one. He's going to be shy now. and disappear under the sticks and the grass, but still totally worth it. I'm so glad that we got to have this leopard tortoise sighting. And let's chat a little bit about tortoises whilst we're on our way. I just want to make sure that I get to that lion sighting within my standby position. So we're going to have to leave our tortoise for now. But epic, we're going to be seeing more and more of them. I can't wait. I love tortoises. I think they are hugely entertaining. Oh, how did I get in here? I can't even remember. I got so excited by the tortoise. Alright, tortoise, be safe. Whoop. So I mentioned that water storage organ known as the bursa, and the fact that you shouldn't really handle tortoises, especially during a dry season like this that we are potentially having. And I strongly believe we're going to have a drought, or at least a very dry season again. And I've been as part of a management strategy, especially in reserves that have controlled game populations. One of the things that they do is they conduct controlled burns, and they do it here in Kruger as well, because in this kind of ecosystem, fire is a naturally occurring phenomenon, and it's needed. And depending on who you speak to, it's needed once every 5 years in a specific area, and it's a way of getting rid of the moribund grass layer, so all of the dead vegetation, the dead grass that builds up and stops the fresh seeds from being able to germinate. So anywhere in this kind of area, you need to burn. It depends on your management strategy, but it depends how often you burn, but it does need to happen. So I've been on a couple of controlled burns before, and it is on days, sometimes the weather just does something crazy and the wind all of a sudden picks up and it carries it away. So you've got to make sure that you've got a lot of people around and make a nice big back burn so that the fire can't jump, it can't spread, it can't do extra damage or more damage than it has to. But one of the things that I was doing in that particular instance, and you'd be surprised, tortoises are so resilient. We tend to panic. We think about the fire going over them. They're so slow, they get trapped. But actually, the way that you conduct burns is to have the wind blowing nicely, so it carries the fire at speed on a cool day. So it keeps the fire temperature down, but it moves it along fairly quickly. And the tortoises can actually duck into their shells and disappear, and the fire brushes past them and they're absolutely fine. And I promise you that's true. I've been to quite a few different burns, and I've found tortoises wandering through afterwards. So they're absolutely fine. But I did do a couple of rescues just in case in areas where I thought the burning was more harsh than usual. And I did some mad sprinting backwards and forwards. And this is in an area that was incredibly dry and dense. And not much rainfall at all compared to where we are now. It's in the northwestern province of South Africa, up towards a little town called Aldays. By the end of it, I had a car. Well, I had about 5 tortoises in the back of our car with the volunteers. And because of this water storage organ thing that I was telling you about, I rushed them immediately to the nearest dam so that they would at least have some access to water to replenish their supplies. But we had everything, tortoises ranging from this big to this big. Picked up on something very clever. When we had a look at that tortoise, he's got grooves all the way along those shoots or scoots, the coverings, the keratin coverings along their backs of their shells that make those beautiful patterns. And Lisa, you picked up on the grooves and you were wondering if it's like rings of a tree. Can you count them and age the tortoise? Yes, kind of. So they grow more during the summer period, and then they obviously don't grow very much during their winter period. So yes, year by year, they will grow like that. However, the one thing you've got to be careful of, you can't count them exactly. You can get a rough idea, but they tend to get smoothed out as the tortoise ages. So Rose out from the center, but the outside ridges, right on the edges of the scoots, those are the bits that start to rub away and smooth out. Me on the Game Drive channel. Now that I'm a bit closer, I'll be able to hear. Yeah, stations, I'm just at the airstrip now. They're making an approach to that Ngala sighting. Hello. Standing by. I do struggle to copy you, but I'll make my way in now. Yeah, copy, go ahead. Just repeat your message. Copy that, thanks. Just to confirm exactly where it is, it's on Central Road, on the southwestern corner of the airstrip. That's affirmative. I'm sure I'll find it from there. Thank you. Sorry guys, I'm just making sure I've got the directions to this lion sighting. And having learned from previous days, I made sure that I know which particular, just because it's on the western side of the airstrip, whether it's the southern side or the northern side or the central side, that definitely helps to know. As we approach the sighting, we've got some guesses as to who it might be. So, Conchino John, you think it might be the Styx. Teresa, you've said Amber Eyes, and the amber-eyed female is Junior. And Lynn, you thought it might be Nkuhumas. Let us see. I don't know. I've got no idea. I'm as in the dark as you are. Let us find out. Past Buff Pan towards Central. The useful thing as well in finding sightings when you don't necessarily have the same road name as the other guides, which is the case here. The road name of this road is different on my map. But useful is the fact that there have been several cars coming and going, which makes following tire tracks just that little bit easier. Keep your eyes peeled for wherever these lions might be hiding. Here we go. That wasn't too difficult now, was it? There's a big safari vehicle there. Cool. So So, let us approach and find out. Oh, they're up. Find out who they are. There's a female. There's 2 females. Very interesting. Who have we got here? Oh, somebody's looking a bit injured. Sure. A lion without a tail. Young males. This is a young male walking ahead of us, very young male, sub-adult male. This surely has got to be... Who is this? I don't know. Mystery lions. Is it part of the Styx Pride? No, the Styx males are older than that. Is it one of the prides that's been pushed out maybe by the Matimba males from Londolozi? Try and get ahead of them and figure it out. Bit of a thick block in here. Oh, really doesn't like being turned all the way to the left. Young males, all young males. I can't go crashing after them, they're not relaxed at all. 1, 2, 3. 3 young males, 2 lionesses. 1 lioness doesn't have a tail. This little boy is quite badly injured. One of the boys is quite badly injured. Goodness me. Well, that was unexpected. Here was that lioness on the right without a tail. Amazing. Well, none of us got it right, I'll tell you that. For sure. It was certainly a surprise for all concerned. I'm just going to wait for Craig to finish repositioning before I start my engine. Hungry. And Karen, you're speculating that this might be some of the original members of the Tsalala Pride. Apparently their matriarch, or the oldest female, was killed by the Birmingham boys, but in fact she had 2 daughters, one of whom was a tailless female. Wow, this is interesting. I need to get back onto the road. There are 2 other vehicles here. I want to try and stay with them. I'm hoping they're going to lie down. They're getting close to our boundary. I wonder if these guys haven't been, if it's the Tsalala Pride. I have heard stories that the Matimba males, in a strange turn of affairs, have been causing them some grief. Let's try and find a way around here. Lions, so we've got to do it carefully. Look how thin he's looking. Definitely needs some feeding up. Take lots of screenshots, guys, and send them through to us so we can start to figure out who these lions are. Shame, boys. 3 young males, 2 females. The females are limping. The male has a rather sore-looking bottom, one of them, with a big bite out of it. These guys have definitely been in some kind of conflict, and most likely with other male lions. It could be the Birmingham boys, it could be the Matimbas. I'm not going to pressurize this one male anymore by trying to follow too closely behind. He's got quite a bad injury on his back left side. It's looking very, very painful, and he is limping on it. You're going to struggle here in this thick block. I'm fairly certain that these injuries that we're seeing, it is the Tsalala Pride. And oh, there we go. There you can see that hole in his back end. That is quite bad. He'll heal. He will heal. But that is painful looking. I'm pretty sure this has been caused by the Matimba males. They have been causing a little bit of havoc. With the Tsalala Pride, they've chased them off a hippo kill a couple of days ago. Shame, and they've been uprooted from home. Concentrating on staying with them for a moment. I'd love to be able to get in front of them, but there's 2 vehicles on the road, so I can't. There. They should be coming to a nice open clearing soon, which will help matters a great deal. But what an interesting, unexpected find. I don't know if any of you saw that coming, because I certainly didn't. Jolt. direction. I'm going to try and loop around ahead of us. Ahead of them. Which way are they going? Coming parallel towards us. You can see with all of this monkey orange, we're not going to be able to stick with them this side. But there is a road that goes off. They're going to come out that side. Let's go around. Let's loop around onto that road. We'll catch them there. Oh, there isn't a road, but there is a lot clearer of a space. So let's go this way. Here we go. Lots of screenshots, everybody. Let's have a look and work out who these boys are. Oh, bless you. Looking very, very thin. Hello, boy. Shame. Quite a young male. Hello, big girl. Oh, she's beautiful. Even without the tail. Here's the other female gone. Up ahead of us, I think. So apparently both her mother and herself, they both lost their tails to hyenas. Here comes the last two. The young female and that young male with that hole. Oh, that's quite bad. Let's loop around, try and find a nice open space. At least we got those front-on views. And loop back around them, but whilst I do, a big thank you to many viewers, including Georgianne, Sheila and Blair, who were helping to share the Londolozi reports as well as to help us figure out who these lions are. Luckily we're coming to a nice open patch now, so we should be able to get them in clear view. 5 lions who have definitely seen better days. Trying to work out where they're heading to. Luckily they've turned north, so still within our boundaries. Now if these are Londolozi lions, they're skittish not because of people but because of what they've been through. Watch your heads, everyone. Including Brian, who's doing a fantastic job of ducking bushes and filming at the same time. Coming up to a road. Oh, if they hit this drainage line, we're not going to be able to follow them. incredible. Hello, girl. There is an enormous eroded patch, but I think they're going to the dam. That's where they're heading. They're going to go and drink, maybe. Although they might be a bit put off because of the lodge. I'm hoping that's where they're heading to. We are going to struggle to stay with them, but at least we've had this wonderfully brief view of a pride I've never seen before. Definitely looking a bit the worse for the wear, though. Wow. There goes our tailless female. And there you have it. One of those wonderful things about a live safari. You just never know what you're going to find next, including the Tsalala Pride, who've been, you know, twist of affairs, how the wheel turns, I suppose. They've been so hard hit by the incoming Matimbas after we've just watched the same thing with our Inkahuma Pride and the Styx Pride with the Birmingham boys. You can see this drainage line here is going to make life almost impossible to follow them down into it. So what I'm going to have to do is try and loop around. If they don't come out on the other side, then I'll have a walk in the block and see if they're around, but we can't follow them in there. How are you? Cool. There's guys. They're moving down into the donga there. I can still see them, but I cannot drive in the eroded areas like this. Oh, plane. Still driving parallel with them. There's a very good chance that they are going towards the dam, but I can't drive in these eroded patches like this. It's going to cause some serious environmental damage. Okay, let's find our way around, see if they pop out the other side. So glad we got there when we did. To go down the Arathusa Deliveries Road, which is the closest that we're going to get to an easy road to where I want to be. It's incredibly thick in here. I think these lionesses and these lions are going to lie down somewhere in the shade. Let's just see if we can catch up with them here. Stick around for now. If they do decide to come out, then at least we've got them on this side. My hat flew off, but I needed to see. Stay, hat. Oh. Ducking in here just to see if they pop out. Slightly less eroded on this side, so we can drive here. Oh, thick block. hit at every turn by trees. Just trying to listen for alarm calls, try and figure out which way they're going. Otherwise we're going to have to loop back around. They're going straight for the dam, but you can see how dense it is in here. Can't really do much in the way of driving up along this drainage line. Okay, let's keep going. Carry on with our search for these mystery lions. What an exciting morning it's been. Just make sure I'm not going to fall into that dip. Concentrate on figuring out where these lions have gone and what they're up to. I do know that Brent is out and about and he's available for a little while this morning to say hello to you all and to give you an update on his morning. So I think for now, let's head across to him, and it gives me a chance to just try and relocate these wonderful, quirky lions for you. And I'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome everyone. I know it's quite late in the safari to be seeing Jean-Dre, who's on camera with me today, and myself. My name's Brent Smith. We are out testing some really incredible new equipment that will hopefully... Oh, the Warburg's eagle being chased by a fork-tailed drongo. So we, as I was saying, off they go. We are testing some incredible new equipment for the walks, and now off they go. And unfortunately, it's so super secret and exciting, we can't even show you what it is, but it will definitely make a big difference and add another incredible facet to our already bustling team of different gadgets. And believe it or not, they're even brave enough to let me touch this gadget. So you guys are going to have to wonder about that. So you can just join us for a little bit while we move around to look for our next little walking area that we're going to go into. So we've been moving around different parts of the reserve and checking for different things. We did find some lion tracks early this morning, but they crossed out of our area following a herd of buffalo. So hopefully they'll come back. And there's a report. Oh, African harrier hawk. Oh, Murphy's Law, off he takes. But an African harrier hawk, pretty sure, was raiding. It's going to come out in front of us. Oh, we might have just landed in a better spot. We're just going to try to sneak forward. And off he goes. So it is very windy at the moment, which is making us, all the birds at least, a little bit difficult to sit. They're sitting and moving quite quickly, a little bit nervous. Quite a lot of the general game is also quite nervous in this wind. So at the moment we're actually looking for some elephants, and their tracks seem to be heading in this general direction. they seem to be eluding us after days and days of elephants everywhere. This morning we haven't seen one. There's some relatively fresh dung in the road, so I think they've carried on this direction. Well, looks like they've actually gone further to the south. But really, really, really hot and warm. So guys, Jamie's moved around a little bit, so she's probably in a better position now. And we're going to cross back to her to see what she's doing. Jeandre and I are going to continue, and hopefully we'll see you a little bit later, and hopefully we do find some elephants, which is high on our list of priorities this morning.
And you found me exactly where you'd left me. I've done a full loop. They haven't popped out yet. They might have been looking for a place to go flat in here to hide away in the shade. They might also be heading towards the dam still. So I've done another big loop and I've come back to where we were. I'm going to head towards the dam now. I did hear some Franklin shouting off in the distance. We haven't lost them yet. They could well still be here. And if they don't pop up this time around, then I've found a nice entrance place where we can go in without doing too much damage. And we'll look for them there. But I think they're on their way to drink. Poor lions. That a lot of you will have picked up, just as I did, how thin they're looking. And Susie, you were very concerned, and Carol, you were wondering surely they can hunt still, even if they are being chased off. I think it's a combination of being chased off their kills, the fresh injuries that they do have, as well as the stress that they're under. They are under tremendous stress at the moment. There's some strange males, just like our Nkuhumas. Our Nkuhumas have handled it a little bit better. They got lucky and managed to find a dead buffalo. They've managed to hunt successfully. Oh, there they are. Got him. Hello, guys. Here we go. Perfect. I'm going to approach really slowly. They're definitely skittish because of all of the stress they've been under. There you can hear the babbler's alarm calling in response to them. Let's just stop here for the moment. And I'm sure that they are hunting. It could be what they're doing now, whilst they're on their way to the dams, keeping an eye out for any potential sources of prey. But they are looking thin. They need to feed soon. But just bear in mind how resilient lions actually are. I think they're hunting. I'm not going to reposition. They've got that dead still look in their eyes. And the females, oh, here comes a female. They've spotted something. Could be people. We're right next to the staff village, so they might be looking at people. But I'm just going to give them a moment. Obviously, with them in this condition, or any lion, I don't want to do any kind of sabotaging of their hunting efforts. Squirrels are shouting, babblers are shouting. No, they're not hunting. They've relaxed a bit. They're going to lie down in the shade. Once they've settled, then I will reposition, but let's give them a moment. Here comes the female without the tail. She is beautiful. She has the most exquisite face. Although it does seem rather strange seeing a lioness without a tail. And they've accidentally, they don't know this area, they've accidentally come across and encountered the staff village. I don't think they knew it was here, which is why they're peering so intently and approaching so carefully. I can only see 3 at the moment, the female and the 2 young males. I'm going to see if she goes to lie down or if she pushes them onwards. Now, I know that they're looking thin and I know they're looking injured, but don't forget how incredibly resilient lions are. And they've come to a good place. There's no lions on Arathusa apart from them at the moment. There's plenty of prey around. And the dam is a good place to come as well, because there's lots of animals around. She's got the most amazing body posture. She's intently focused on something. She's sniffing the air. She's moved slightly out of my view. It's so interesting. I'm so used to reading their body language by using their tails. And now we have to rely completely on the rest of her body language. Her ears, her structure, the way that she's looking. There's a whole family of warthogs behind us that Brian's just pointed out. They haven't noticed the lions, I don't think. The lions haven't seen them. Our warthog... Oh, they're onto him. They're off, they've run away. The lions didn't even notice that they were there. It's that family of warthog that we see at the airstrip. Here comes the second lioness, poking her head out of the bushes. Oh, those warthogs had a lucky escape. They were about to wander down to the dam. Okay. Hello, boy. You guys up? I think he might just have seen the warthogs. He's looking intently behind us. But he's not going to follow up. A warthog, believe it or not, even for a pride of lions, can be quite a struggle. They put up a serious fight. They're heading towards the dam. There you go, you can see them through the tambueti thicket. That very slow, steady posture of an animal that is about to go hunting. We can't really see them from our perspective, but we can watch this male's behavior. He's not as intently focused. And at the back, coming through, is the injured male. Had a bit of a head rub with the female there. She's coming through. These young males are probably only about 2 years old. And this is probably their first experience with marauding males coming through. So this must have been a bit of a shock. Female standing stock still. You can see how careful they are in their movements. This is completely unfamiliar territory to them. And they've done exactly what our Nkuhumas have done. And what an incredible ending, well not ending, but incredible twist to the tale that we've been following. The Birmingham boys kicked the Matimba males out and they terrorized the Sticks and the Nkuhumas. And in response, the Matimba males moved to Londolozi, and the Pride is going through exactly the same thing and responding in such a similar way to the Nkuhumas. The Nkuhumas split away, tried to flee, have moved, kept moving all the way through Djuma to Manguleti, Buffelshoek, constantly moving. And here we have these this pride repeating what I think is going to be a very similar pattern. This could well be mother and son. He is, because of his injury, he's very attentive to the presence of the vehicle. Now that he's lying down, I'm going to try and shuffle closer. Oh, no, he's going to keep moving with her. Let's just let him get up in peace for the moment. You can hear the squirrels frantically shouting, letting everybody know that there's lions here. And I think he just wants to lie down and rest that sore leg for a while. What an amazing sighting. I'm going to shuffle closer a little bit. He's going to get up and follow soon. Just going to let my engine run for a moment. Drive directly at him. Now I can see the rest of the pride. They're not hunting, they're lying down in the shade of the tambuti thicket, but you can't really see them from where we are. I can't reposition in any way without disturbing him, and I really don't want to. Not with that injury. He'll go up and join them when he's ready. Oh, that squirrel's so cross. Lions, 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 lions. He's telling the whole world. You can see how young he is. He's still even got his spots on his feet. He's still a baby. He obviously just got caught in the crossfire. Wow. And we are definitely going to be staying with these lions for as long as possible. They're going to be so hungry, they're going to be opportunists. And if anything walks past unsuspecting through this drainage line, they're going to give it a go. And yes, Carol, they're still perfectly capable of hunting. And they will. I think they just needed to get away. And it could be that, for example, with the hippo kill that they were chased off, or any other buffalo kills, anything like that, they've put in an enormous energy expenditure to bring those animals down. And then to lose it to males who are intolerant of their presence and don't want to share, that's where this really skinny looks comes from. And then the stressed look. You can look at his eyes. That's not a happy lion. His whole world has just been turned completely upside down. Just like what happened with Junior. But at least Junior had a little bit of age advantage over these guys. Oh, I said just like Junior, his world's been turned upside down. But unlike Junior, at least he has two other brothers, probably brothers, but could also be cousins, with him. And he is younger than Junior, they all are. And Emily, you were wondering how old the lions are in this different pride. As you know, they are unfamiliar to me. This boy here that we've been looking at, he's probably about 2, maybe just over 2 years old. and I think the other two are much the same age. Very little mane coming through, still tiny, still got their spots from when they were cubs along their legs. So still very young. Definitely wouldn't be classified as an adult. They're sub-adults at the best. They've just come out of that cub stage. So sub-adult males around about 2. As for the females, it's a little bit more difficult for me to see. I haven't had a proper look at their teeth or at their noses. All of that youthful curiosity, though. Looking up and about at the various birds that have flown over. They're very attractive lions. But that one without the tail is an interesting lioness. Now, what I'm going to do in a moment is I'm actually going to try and loop around, and you'll have to bear with me while I do it. I'm going to loop all the way back around off onto the road. These lions are not going to change position for now, and if they do, I know exactly where they're going to go. And I know that I could get a nice position around the other side. But I just need to do that without disturbing our lion with the injury. So whilst I do that, let's chat a little bit about Joel's question. And Joel, you were wondering, that lioness without the tail. Just keep the engine running for a moment, so that I don't immediately pull off and startling. It's fine though. I just noticed when we were following before that he's definitely showing signs of being more nervous. Whoop. That probably wouldn't have helped if I'd hit the tree, but I didn't, luckily. Now Joel, you were wondering, with that lioness without the tail, would she have any difficulties, say, with mating? Anything along those lines? And the answer, Joel, is probably not. Maybe the most area of difficulty she would have would be in hunting, just because that tail can be such a good mechanism for balance. It'll keep her and it helps them to act as a rudder and change direction without falling over. But that being said, it's not going to be a huge disadvantage. She will be well adapted to dealing with that. In terms of mating, I can sort of see where you're coming from, because we've seen with both the big cats, the leopards and the lions, we've seen their mating dance. And the female goes and she rubs her tail all over the face of the male, and she swishes it backwards and forwards, and then she lifts it up as part of what's known as the lordosis reflex, which is a way of indicating to the male that she's ready to mate. Okay, we're far enough away that we can speed up a little bit. But in this particular case, there's so much of a lion mating that isn't just based on scent. It's based on, not just based on actions, it's based on scent as well. So in this circumstance, it would be absolutely fine. No male lion would misread her signs. Interesting what's happening here with the Matimba males, but I'll go into that in depth a little bit in a moment. I'm trying to figure some stuff out in my head as well. About this Tsalala Pride, and I really am so grateful for a lot of the updates that the viewers send through to us, especially when they're lions that you hardly ever expect to see. Now, Georgianne, apparently this is not the whole of the Tsalala Pride, which is something that I suspected, but I wasn't sure, so I didn't want to mention it. Apparently they have split twice during the chaos of the Matimba male takeover. But amazing to see some different lions and to chat a little bit about we've built up this whole story. We've been following the story of the Birmingham boys and what they've done to the lionesses in our area and the group dynamics. And here we have a completely different side of the impact. It's incredible to see. Jan sent through that info about them splitting due to the actions of the Matimbas, and it's similar to what we've seen with the Nkuhumas. And Anna Marie, you were wondering if these lions are too young to hold their own against the Matimbas, and for the males, absolutely they are. They might even, depending on how the situation plays out, they might even be forced into a nomadic environment or a nomadic lifestyle far sooner than they're prepared for. And it could be that this is why these lionesses have split away in the way that they have. So we've seen the peacemaking efforts that have come from the Nkuhumas with the Birmingham boys. They tried to get them to mate with them. They went into false estrus. But these lionesses, who are most likely the mother of these males, they're desperately trying to protect them and to keep them safe. And they're right at that wrong age. If they were females, they'd probably be okay. At 2 years old, the males would probably leave them alone because they'd be able to mate with them soon. But with young males like this, there's a very good chance that they are hugely under threat. And so often, pride splits happen when females have cubs or young cubs and they're trying to protect them. And I think that's what we've seen with the Nkuhumas, and we might be seeing it with these lions now. Which side is best? Let's try this side. Let's try this view for now. They're still there. I just want to find you guys a nice view, so, and maybe we can get an idea of the age of the females as well. They tuck themselves into the thicket and they're just watching and getting an idea. Dam. We've got this beautiful eye-level shot with these lionesses. They're just up on the wall behind us. I'm going to see if she relaxes a little bit, if she goes back to sleep. Her ears back like that tells us that she's unhappy. If she doesn't relax, then I'll back off a little bit. But the rest of them are quite content. Look at her beautiful orange eyes. She is stunning. And she's not young. This is a female without the tail, and I apologize, she's not a young lioness. Although it's not a completely reliable method, her nose is totally black. I need her to yawn for me as well. Please take some screenshots. She's got a tatty right ear, and you can see, whilst we're looking at her, all those spots around her eyes, those are ticks, and it's a sign of stress, a sign that she hasn't been eating properly. She's stressed out. There's people walking in the back there, that's why they're looking up. They're quite far away, there's no threat to them. Oh, I hope it's people. Oh, not people. No, it's not people. He spotted something. We're right on the boundary of their staff village, so I'm going to be just keeping an eye on what's happening there. Just not that they pose any threat to the people, more that they might run away from where they are now. Apparently we've been having some audio issues. You guys have been, or some of you have been really struggling to hear me, and we do apologize for that. We're going to be working on it as quickly as possible. But if you were struggling to hear it, it should be fixed now, and you should be back up and audible once again. And if you missed my soliloquy on the lioness, she's looking stressed and she's not young. She is not a young lioness. Her nose is completely black. She's got ticks around her eyes. She is under pressure. But she's a beautiful girl, and those bright orange eyes. The male that was sitting on the other side has moved across to join them. He's tucked away behind the female at the back, so we probably won't be able to see him clearly from your perspective, and I don't want to stress them out too much by repositioning, but there you can see him licking that wound. I've got a slightly clearer view, so I'm going to have a look with my binoculars. It's deep. It is quite a deep injury. There's a flap of skin that's been pulled away, and that's almost certainly come from a conflict with a male lion. I can't say for sure, but I think it is. There he goes, he's up. Oh, shame. They're so skittish, they even got a fright when the leaves blew past them. Oh, oh, got in the female's space. Here he comes. Ah, she's definitely an old lady. And a bit grumpy. She wasn't really that keen on him coming to join her. And as always, our brilliant regular viewers are coming through with sterling efforts as to the background of these lions. And I've heard of them now that Pat has shared that information. Pat, thank you so much. Now that you've said the word BB, or the name BB, I remembered. I have definitely read about them in conjunction or in connection with the Mapogos. Now Pat tells me that the older tailless lioness, known as BB, she had 2 adult daughters, one of whom was also missing a tail, or had also lost her tail. And they had had cubs by the Mapogos. BB also there were also 2 sub-adult females and 1 sub-adult male known as Solo, and a single surviving sub-adult female in a split away from the pride, from what I understand. Sure, a bit complicated. I might need a mind map or something. A family tree. And since the Mapogos have all died out, they've all been killed by other males in the last few years. They were killed by the Majingis largely, the Majingalani males. It could be why there's a bit of a power vacuum that the Matimba males stepped into. So the Majingis came in and displaced the Mapogos and eventually killed the last surviving members of that coalition. But maybe the Majingalanis are also getting old. I'm not sure who the dominant pride males of this pride were before the Matimbas came in, but obviously whoever they were decided that it wasn't worth the conflict with the Matimbas. And we forget, or sometimes I do, how incredibly large and intimidating those Matimba males actually are. They're huge males. And yes, they were old and they weren't up to an onslaught of 5 big young males with fresh blood. but they're still a force to be reckoned with all of their own, even with the ginger male's injury to his paw. A whole a whole offshoot storyline. I've said too many words this morning. A whole offshoot to the story of our Birmingham Boys saga. An unforeseen impact to the disruption in the lion world that stretched all the way to Londolozi, and then in an amazing turn of affairs returned back to our boundaries. Come to the right place. So just to give you a rough idea, maybe we can have a look at where the dam is. I'm going to just show you. We've come right to the south-eastern corner. That shouldn't have been the struggle that it was. If we look across to my right, there's the dam. That clearing up there, that's the dam that we drive onto. We drive onto that clearing and we look across to the dam. And there's lots and lots of, well, there were about 2 seconds ago, there were a couple of waterbuck wandering around there. Now, I'm not sure if our lionesses have picked up on them, and they will be the one to initiate the hunts. There are some on that clearing still, and I think they're just waiting for their opportunity. It's not familiar to them, but definitely be keeping your eyes on the Arathusa Dam camera. You could well be seeing some new faces. Beautiful Tamboti thicket area. Remember I spoke about the drainage lines around us, or around the Arathusa Dam? Well, that's where we are now, in that network of drainage lines. And the female has shifted down slightly. I think she was getting a little bit too warm, tucked up against a teenage boy. Big yawn at the back. I'm not sure where this particular young male thinks he's off to. Maybe he's thirsty enough or brave enough start heading towards the dam. Shame. He's looking so hungry. We have to really keep, but it's good. The day is windy, it's nice and breezy. That's going to work to their advantage. It's going to keep prey unsettled and allow them to sneak up on them unannounced. And I think he just went for a bit of a wander. Don't go up that way, boy. There's a staff village there. And a storeroom. That's a good boy. Back into the shade. A little bit too warm in that cluster of lions over there. And there you can see that serious lack of mane as he was walking around. They always look like teenage boys caught right in the middle of a growth spurt. They've got huge feet, skinny legs, and sort of scraggly facial hair. He is young, 2, maybe just over 2. I'm just going to update the guys as to where they are now, because they are asking if I have an update for them as to their position. And then I'm going to chat a little bit about our female and her interesting lack of a tail. Just waiting for an opportunity to hop on the Game Drive channel. Stations is Ngala are now Lalapanzi, just in the southeastern corner, just by the staff village, by the pump house in the donga there. There is a person there. I'll keep an eye on him. excuse me, sir, there's lions. Please don't scare them. They're quite relaxed. These lions come from lodges where they will have seen people before many times. The only thing I don't want, I'm not in any way worried for that man, but I just don't want him to scare them away. I'm going to just watch and see what he's doing. He's on the phone. He's sort of wandering around on the phone. Ah, okay. We're good. We're all good. We're not running the risk of him chasing them away by mistake. Alright, let's chat a little bit about this female quickly because she's presented her rump to us in such a good way. Here's that lack of the tail that we've been talking about. It's quite a strange image to see if you're not used to seeing it. We're so familiar with the way that their tails work. And Robin, you were wondering, will that not disadvantage her when she has cubs? Now we all know that those lions have that dark black tip to their tail as a way of creating a nice clear sign to their cubs to help them follow through the grass. Robin, you were wondering, is that not going to mean that she might struggle to help keep her cubs in line behind her when she moves? And the answer is yes, the tail helps with that to a certain degree. All that it means, though, is that she might just compensate slightly by doing more in the way of contact calls, being a little bit more vigilant as to whether or not the cubs are following behind her. It's not really going to stop that ever-present biological need for species continuation, and it's not really going to disadvantage it. It's interesting to see her without a tail, and apparently that was a hyena injury. This is my first time seeing it. It looks like, almost like a docked dog's tail. Now I know that that practice has been banned in South Africa for the last few years, but there are still some older dogs whose tails have been docked by breeders wandering around. And the way that it would have worked, yes, they have bones that are most of the way down that tail, and a level of probably about, I'm not sure, maybe about halfway. I'm just thinking of the skeletons that, or the anatomy drawings that I've done of lions in the past. It doesn't reach all the way to the tip, so the rest of that is very strong muscular and connective tissue that allows it to, that great degree of flexibility to swish and to flick and to counterbalance them, as well as acting as such a perfect mood indicator. As I said, I find it slightly more difficult to read her body language just because she's missing a tail. Interesting. Very, very interesting. I wonder how the rest of the lions feel about her communication levels. Obviously, they're more complex than we make them out to be, and I'm sure they're very adept at reading the signs from her ears and from the rest of her body. We have a question from Kirsten, who's watching all the way in Durban, I believe, part of South Africa, on our coastline. And Kirsten would like to know, where she says that docking processes in dogs has been, in some places, thought to cause spinal problems, although that, I imagine, is also combined with a level of lack of control of the pedigree breeding that sometimes happens, and a level of inbreeding and genetic defects that come along with it. But whether or not she has spine problems, I don't think so. It could be. Just as I said, whilst she's hunting, that tail would be a useful counterbalance and a way of helping her turn. But as it is, I think that there's so much to acting in her advantage in terms of their skeletal structure, those loose shoulder blades, that muscle structure that's not like ours. It's loose and floppy when you feel it, but capable of incredible bursts of strength when needed, and that probably compensates in a way that looks after her spine or protects her spine. Aha! Now here we have a brilliant question that's come through. Something I didn't think of, but it would really bring the story full circle. I mentioned earlier when I was giving an update on Junior that I strongly suspect he's done the natural young male thing, which is to go nomadic, but that he's probably been putting off for a while because he's completely without any litter mates or any pride mates to form a coalition with. And Dr. Debbie, you were wondering if these young males would be potential coalition members for Junior. And yes, I think they could be. And wouldn't that really bring the story round perfectly? Lions are not too fussy about being related to the males that they hang around with and that they fight and defend territories with and that they mate with females with. And the reason behind this is because, first of all, they can't afford to be. They need that extra level of support because a young male lion on his own is not going to do too well. But secondly, they all get a chance to mate with the females. So there's not one dominant member who gets a chance. They all will have a chance at some point in their lives to pass on that genetic structure. So they're not like cheetah, who are really, really fussy about basically sticking only with brothers because they might not get a chance to mate with a female. If they were to split away from this pride and they were to encounter Junior, and I mean the Sabi Sands is a big place and we don't know where Junior is, but it's nice to hypothesize or to guess at what might happen. The three of them will be very tightly bonded. Obviously, they're litter mates. They've come from the same place. So there's him and then there's those two little boys at the back. They'd make a really nice three musketeers group, but they're a little bit younger than Junior. If they were to encounter him, there might be a couple of signs of aggression, but I don't think too much because they are all so young. Might take him some time to get to know them, and then they'll start to push in and join as a coalition together. It would be very interesting to see. Now, as far as I know, the oldest male in the Mpocho coalition, who is known as, hold on, brains gears are whirring, was Makulu, I think. And he came into the Mpocho coalition of those 5 other younger males who were very closely related. And there's a lot of conjecture as to whether or not he came from the same father. But either way, he was accepted into an already very tightly bonded group of 5 male lions to form the almost unstoppable group of 6 of them. He was older, much like Junior would be. So yes, Dr. Debbie, in an ideal world, which this place isn't always, of course, but in an ideal world, maybe these young males would be able to join up with Junior. And I have one more question to pose for you, because we're seeing these lions for the first time, and because I am still new to the Sabi Sands area, where does this pride name come from? It's ringing bells in my head, but I can't work out why. Can't work out if it's a part of an area of the Sabi Sands, which is quite often how these prides are named, or if it's something different, if it's connected to a camp, to a lodge, or to a river system. It's somewhere it's ringing bells, but I honestly can't remember exactly where from. If you do know the history behind this name, or if you find it out somehow, I know that the lions of the Sabi Sands all have histories and pride breakdowns. It's one of the amazing things about working out here, is that so much history has been recorded for posterity. But if you know where the name Tsalala came from, please let me know. And if you are a new viewer and you have any questions that you would like to see, or you would like any more information, because I have given a brief summary of the comings and goings of the lions in this area of the last few weeks, but I haven't necessarily explained it in full detail. If you're a new viewer, you want to understand a bit more, just remember that this is live. So we're sitting with this lion pride right here at Arathusa Dam, pretty much. And if you want to ask us any questions or send us any updates, you can do it on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv, and we'd be very, very keen to hear from you. And if these lions haven't moved before the end of the sunrise safari this morning, please keep an eye on the Arathusa Dam camera, because you never know who might be paying you a visit, and I think it might be this group. Either way, I'm going to be following up with them this afternoon. And what an interesting fact that we've ended up in exactly the same place we were in for our sunset safari yesterday, desperately searching for Shadow, the leopardess. Well, wherever she is, if she's in this area, she's going to be lying low with a bunch of lions that have just moved in. And what will happen with these lions? Are they going to stay here? Are they going to try and forge new territory in Arathusa, or are they just waiting for things to settle down with the Matimbas before returning home? Or are they going to keep going? What will happen when, say, the Styx females find out that they're here, or the Nkuhumas? I don't have answers for any of these questions. I'm just letting you know that there's going to be more interesting times ahead. Now, I think we've done it fairly well, but I'm going to do a deliberate request from Brian. I know we've kind of covered it. Oh, no, but you lions, you're not cooperating very well. Please turn your heads back to us. Basically, what I wanted to ask Brian to do is for all of them, or at least the ones that we can see, the two in front, starting with our our tailless female, let's zoom in nice and tight on her face. And I'm sure you guys have got screenshots, but I'm giving you a nice opportunity here to get those whisker spot patterns and that tatty ear. So there you go, grab a screenshot now and share it with us. And I'm sure you got a picture of her nose as well when she turned to face us, and those beautiful orange colored eyes. But this is the perfect opportunity so that whenever we need to see them, let's say they split further and we don't know who they are, okay, she's kind of recognizable, she's got no tail, but for the others as well, it might be really useful. And let's try, if we can, he's now licking his foot and not being very cooperative, but let's try and get that male that's just behind her as well. And who knows, get a shot of those whisker, distracted by leaves. Come on boy, look back. And maybe in 3 or 4 years time, we might see a group of 3 young males, or even 4 with Junior, and we'll be able to look back on the screenshots that you've got from today and compare them. He's not being very obliging though, is he, Brian? Oh well, we'll keep our eyes peeled for further opportunities. Maybe, as well as him, that male lion at the back there, the young male, he's turned his head fairly well. He's a bit further away, but we should at least be able to see something of it. And let's get whisker spot patterns for him as well. There you go. Perfect. Thank you, Brian. And then we'll have a fantastic opportunity to compare and contrast in the future. Buana, there's Ngala there. Oh, he knows. He doesn't mind. I'm not sure if you can hear it, but the squirrel's still shouting. He had a bit of a break, and maybe he had a bit of a nap and forgot that the lions were here. but he's still going quite half-heartedly, I might add. And the hornbills as well are also shouting. I tried to explain this a little bit earlier, and it's so complex to kind of get a handle around this. Let's look back at what we know from with the Birmingham boys. The Birmingham boys came in, they took over from the Matimbas territory. That is natural, the females. That is a natural part of the whole lion process. And during that process, they killed an Nkuhuma female, they killed a sub-adult female, and they killed the Styx cubs. They caused chaos and they pushed the lionesses away. And it was only much later that they started mating with them. And even then, they haven't been mating with all of the Nkuhuma females. Let's stick with the Nkuhuma example for now because there's that closest similarity there. Now, if we look at these prides, the Matimba males have just pushed into their territory. They've been pushed out from their females, the Styx and the Nkuhumas, and obviously they're going to be looking for new mating opportunities. But what often happens, and I mentioned this in terms of pride splitting, is these females who have cubs that are just on the cusp, they're at that danger area. So these young males could well have been, and we see the one with the injury, they could well have been killed by the Matimbas. So what they've tried to do is the lionesses have actually tried to run away as a way of protecting the youngsters in their group, and that's probably why they've split away. And we saw a very similar thing. We've only seen those two Nkuhuma lionesses together at the moment, and they're young. We haven't seen Amber Eyes or the older female. And that's because, in my opinion, they are out somewhere with that remaining surviving sub-adult female who's quite a similar age to these males, and they're doing exactly the same thing. They're trying to protect them. Where are you going, big girl? Are you going to go find some shade? Right in the front of our vehicle. Has she seen the water back yet? I don't think so. Oh, barreling after her. Sweet. Here they go into some very dense vegetation. Here's our injured male coming through. Oh no, sorry, that's not our injured male. The injured male went behind us in true skittish fashion. And they're going towards the dam, it looks like. And I think let's try and stick with them. I'm actually going to try and drive through here. We might have to do a bit of ducking and diving, so watch your heads. And stay with them for the last few moments of our sunrise safari. Whilst I am repositioning to find, and so are they actually, to find us a nice view, Gerard, who's watching all the way in Western Australia, you were wondering how males meet up in a coalition if they're not related to each other. So obviously these boys are going to form a coalition. Got to be careful here. Sorry, Gerard, I will answer your question in a moment. I just want to make sure I don't disrupt anything. which is why I'm going so slowly to make sure there's no water back there or anything, but there isn't. Stop here for now. There's another vehicle coming in behind us. So Gerard, if we have that wonderful situation where these 3 males survive this current situation, they go off on their own, form a coalition, and then meet up with Junior, you were wondering how that would happen. Now, male lions carry a very strong scent, even if they're not scent marking, so they'd probably know that the other lions were in the area. And then, as I said, it's not going to necessarily be an easy approach. There might be some aggression because they don't know each other. But because they are young, I don't think it would be terribly pronounced. It definitely wouldn't be a fight to the death situation as you see with the older males. There might be a few rumbles, a bit of posturing, and throwing their weight around to try and establish dominance. But particularly when there's an age difference, here comes this other female, it should settle very, very soon. And they make friends with each other by then rubbing their faces along, much in the way we've seen them do in their greeting ceremony. It's far more common with males than it is with females. And an interesting project that I participated in many, many years ago, I think it was about 6 or 7 years ago now. It was in a closed system with a controlled population of lions, but they needed to keep the genetics fresh. And they wanted to help out the young male who was coming from their coalition in a way that they could form a healthy, surviving one. What they did was they darted this young male, removed him from the pride, and put him in a boma, so a fenced area. And then they brought in another male lion from a different part of the country and put him in the same boma. Both a similar age, both at the right sort of young age where they'd start to split. And then the vet who was in charge of the whole operation took a cloth. Now when you dart a lion, you generally you don't block their ears, they hate it, but you try to cover their eyes a little bit, just when they are anesthetized, so that they don't stress out because their eyes stay open. So you put a little bit of gel in their eyes to stop it from drying out, and then you put a cloth over them for a while. And what this vet did was he took the cloth at the end of the whole process when they were both still drugged in the boma, rubbed it all over the face of the one male, and then took it across the other one and rubbed it all over his face, and did that a couple of times. And he said to me, they're going to wake up in a strange environment and they're going to smell like each other. They will be instantly bonded and form that coalition. And I think that instinct towards forming a coalition is really, really strong because it gives them such an added advantage for survival. We've got, as always, the information that I asked for coming through, and I do say thank you very much to those of you who did send it through. And Deborah, yours was the name that came through, but it is a little bit of a struggle right now. We're right in the dip of the Arathusa Dam, so I can't always hear too clearly. But you sent me through the update to say that the Tsalala Pride is named after the Tsalala Pan in Londolozi, and that's perfect. That's kind of what we suspected. It was named after a certain location. That's usually how it goes with the naming of these big prides, usually the area that they are seen in. And it's interesting, I mean, this is a slight off-topic subject, but one of my favorite things to learn about a reserve is why a road is called what it's called. Because some of them have just been randomly picked, but some of them come with the most incredible stories. And just a quick example, since our lions are lying down, is one of the reserve, or the reserve that I used to work at. There was a road called Tsalala It's not really the correct pronunciation. It's more a sound, but won't sound too clear getting across to you guys. So Shalagahle, it means go well. It's a traditional Zulu phrase that you say to somebody when you say goodbye. And basically what it means is go well, travel well wherever you're going, travel safely. And you say it to the person who's leaving, and they say Salagahle to you, which means stay well, if you're staying behind. And the one road was called Shalagahle, and I wanted to know why it was, and I asked. And it was a really beautiful story. It was where there was a memorial site for people who'd quite sadly died in a plane, obviously very sadly, died in a plane accident, and you could see it from the road. You could see the crash site. Just an unfortunate incident. But they'd put up a whole beautiful memorial, and it was such a wonderfully understated way of saying goodbye and travel safely on your further journeys. And bits of history like that can tell you so much about the reserve and the people who used to live here in the years past. Can you hear the wind picking up? I'm going to show you something. There's a big distance between them, and it's too open for it to mean anything right now. But I want to show you the option that the lions have. And as we scan over their faces, looking intently out into the clearing, and they are so beautiful. Let me just point out right at the other side of the clearing, under the shade of the trees. I'm not sure, Brian, if you can see them, but if we go to our buffalo weaver's nest and go all the way through, here we go. There's Waterbuck lying down there, completely unaware of the lions. The lions have approached from downwind, completely instinctively, so as not to alert anything to their presence. So the wind is blowing the Waterbuck scent towards us and towards them. They're going to have to play it patiently and play it safe. You can see how open it is as we pan back towards them. But this wind howling is going to give them a definite advantage in this situation. And they do need to eat. They're going to be on the lookout for food. I'm not sure where our injured male went. I think he's somewhere tucked away further behind. He's lying down in the shade somewhere. Shame. I think that walking for him at the moment is a slow process. It is very deep. It's almost down to the bone. And they've come out into this beautiful open area that is the Arathusa Dam. And Lynn, you were wondering where I am from the lodge and presumably from the camera. So we're on the opposite side to the side that we're usually on. We're on the eastern and the southern side of the dam. The lodge is tucked away in there, exactly where Brian's pointing. It's hidden behind the leaves of the trees, but it is there. Oh, look at those beautiful flowers. Sorry, I'm distracted slightly. The boer beans are flowering. How beautiful is that? A sign of spring. But yes, Lynn, oh, that's so pretty. Look how beautifully bright red those are. Those are the flowers of the weeping boer bean, and they are the reason that it is called a weeping boer bean, because they produce copious amounts of pollen that then drip down off them when the tree is in full bloom. Just a quick aside, I was in the middle of answering Lynn's question. So if you're watching the camera and the camera is pointing straight ahead, we are on your right, but we are hidden from view at this point. There's that big open clearing. Usually we sit on the other side of those dead trees, roughly where the waterbuck were, actually. But just to orientate you, that is where we are. The waterbuck are about 200 meters away from the lions, give or take, across a very big open clearing. But keep your eyes peeled, please, because the lions are going to be coming for a drink, I'm sure. If not to try and tackle something later tonight. Now, it's a baking hot day. Usually, I mean, what is it? It's 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's already probably around 30 degrees or close to. Usually that would mean for lions, this is exactly where we're going to find them this afternoon for the sunset safari. It's not necessarily going to work like that for these guys. As we've seen, they've been slowly moving. They're giving the injured male time to rest, and then they move a little bit further. And I would guess they're going to keep moving, probably into some of the thick stuff around the waterhole. And we can expect to find them there. They're not going to move too far, but they are going to move. They're not going to be as flat as on Earth. We're going to be able to see him from where we are. He's right at the back in the thick stuff. I think he's decided that that shade is a bit more important to him. All I can see is the odd tail flick. But a beautiful pride of lions and such a wonderful surprise. Oh well, as we're slowly coming to the end of our sunrise safari, we want you to reposition, Brian.
Lean in a bit so I can get both.
Lean in a bit, get us both in. Just to double check. We come to the end of our sunrise safari. It's been an incredible time and such an unexpected sighting to see these lions come all the way up from Londolozi. I'm not sure how far it is that they've traveled, but it has been quite phenomenal. And a big thank you to Brian for all of his fantastic camera work and for bringing the thumb along, as always. I'm sure you're all happy to see him back from leave once again. And a big thank you to you all for your wonderful information, and to the girls in FC, Tara and Kirsty. We give a big thank you for directing our show. Have a wonderful day in the world wherever you are, and we'll catch up with you later.